Good morning, everybody. Welcome. This is the first session of the Garland County Master Gardeners Know It to Grow It series for 2024. I can't believe I'm saying that year. And we're so thrilled that everybody braved the cold to be here today. It's going to be a fantastic program. And we have Butch Smith, who is the Design and Facility Manager here at the Garland County Library. And we're so thankful for them for all they do for us and for the community. And he's going to be speaking this morning on native pollinator planting.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, my name is Butch. I was born and raised around here just down the road in Red Oak. Today, basically, we're going to go over what we were doing, why we started changing, and then what we're doing now, and then how you guys can do the exact same thing. I will start off by saying there are a billion different ways to do things. I'm just going to be showing you kind of what worked well for us. And also, I am by no means an expert. This has been 2.5 years of just drinking from the fire hose. But luckily with the Master Gardeners and Garden Gardens and everybody with a green thumb, it's just been super, super helpful in kind of us changing the way that we do things around here. I'll start, actually, you know what, I'm going to start pre-passing this stuff around. This is a list of the mix that we do use and a new mix that we're using this year, and I'll go over that. Basically, the way that things were going before at the library was what you would have at your standard library. It was, and when you say it out loud, it's kind of like, it was planting sod, planting decoratives, and then just, especially with the lawn, just brute forcing everything with fertilizers and herbicides. They, way back in the day, it was just plant your sod, and then you're going to hose it with stuff to keep everything native out of it, and then give it lots of fertilizers, and then just water the bejesus out. When we came in, we started thinking like, is this the right thing to do? Is it the responsible thing to do? Are there ways that we can change things up and then provide opportunities for people to learn at the library, passively almost? So the first thing we did, we canceled all of our chemical contracts. We really scaled back in watering. The watering was being done like 5 days a week, no matter what the conditions were. So even in the rainy season, it was still going. We cut all that back. We started working with the Master Gardeners, and we started kind of pulling some of the decoratives back out. Some of the stuff we had to leave because there was an irrigation system around here, and they're all tied up in there. And so we're like, all right, we'll trim back and kind of leave this stuff. The first thing that I ended up starting to do was, it was test beds. It was, let me experiment to see if I can get this stuff working. The first test bed was over here by our cypress trees and then the 2 areas of the redbud. I ended up talking with Mitzi over at Garden Gardens, just kind of asking her some questions because I know they had tried, doing some pollinator areas too. She gave me the name of a couple companies, Prairie Moon and Ernst. Those are 2 really good native seed providers that we've had really good luck with, very high yield. It's getting to be a little weird out there now because there's a lot of companies that will quickly claim that it's all native species. You've seen like the little wildflower bombs, that you can buy in stores, or they're put into greeting cards that you can put in the ground. From my understanding, most of the time, they're not even from this continent. It is just other companies somewhere just packaging them up and just calling them wildflowers. When we started planting this stuff, of course, it was the first 6 months was just me like standing over the dirt with my fingers crossed going like, first it was, is this weed or what I want? Is this a weed or what I want? And then I really started kind of having a mind shift of the things that we call weeds are the things that are supposed to be here in the first place. And just over time, it all changed. Like even growing up, you would see, my mom would say like, oh, look at the weeds in the ditch and look at all this other stuff, not realizing that, yeah, those were the black-eyed Susans that had been here for millennia. It's been a difficult but enriching kind of shift because there are different ways to do it. You want your pretty gardens, which are perfectly fine, and then you've got your native stuff, but overcoming that mindset of just having something that's going to grow up tall and green and look like a weed And then if you just wait long enough, and then it's just completely covered in color. It's hard for people sometimes to grasp because they're used to one thing. Something I've really been paying attention to now, even my own area out there towards the fairgrounds, is recreational mowing. That you will see if they're behind on their mowing, you will see their fields grow up with beautiful flowers, and you see the swallowtails coming in and the birds and the butterflies, and then you go to work and you come you come home that evening and it's just all gone. It's just been completely mulched into the ground. I have to cheat it a little bit here, like the trimming that I'm doing. I did the 2 beds earlier this week, and then I'll do this other one. Normally, I would leave that stuff because it is habitat. A lot of the plants that you'll be planting in your own areas, the overwintering insects and pollinators live inside of the plants. They live in the little hollow stems. They live in the leaf litter. We are a public library, so we can't let everything kind of go super wild. So we kind of trim these areas over here, but over there in the garden in the upper area, we've started, we just let that go just to provide more habitat. So we're going to start with a couple little facts. Last 10 years alone, we've lost 50 million acres of grassland and prairie land. This was a little shocking. We've lost 80% of it. In North America, that's here and Canada, we've lost 80% of prairies and grasslands. Of the 20% that are still left, 93% of it is completely unprotected. So things are starting to kind of shift back. We're kind of really, paying attention to those things. And we wanted to have these areas around the library just hopefully pique somebody's curiosity. The amount of times that I've had people walk up and say, I've never seen, like, these are beautiful flowers. I've never seen them before. Or I've had people come up and say, like, I used to see these when I was a kid, and I haven't seen them in 20, 30 years. That's all the stuff that was supposed to be here in the first place. And I don't think people understand just how pretty native species can be. So we're trying to do our own little bit here. We're trying to kind of bring it back and be a little bit more responsible with that stuff. One thing we really started noticing when we started converting all these areas back, and even like for those of you who have come to the library since it's been open and whatnot, the hedgerows that we have over here, when they used to be condensed down to about the size of a small beach ball, and it never allowed it to bloom, because by the time it was starting to bud out, they would sculpt it back into the little spheres, and then it would just be a rip-wrap thing covered in spheres. We let it go. Or like somebody on the board, when this was originally built, stopped by and said, thank you, that's what we had intended for in the first place. And it was just by choice, because it's common thinking, like, oh, you have a lawn, you mow it low. You have your bushes, you just sculpt them down so where they look nice and they match each other, and then they match your neighbors. When we started, and I cannot stress this enough, and I am not exaggerating, I have never seen more life per square foot than I've ever seen here. When we started letting that go, and then the pollinators in our test bed, we haven't gotten to the garden yet. I just seen things. I'd lived here my entire life, and I saw things that I'd never seen before. I'd never seen a hummingbird moth, much less 20 of them. And then I would call people over, have you ever seen one of these things before? And they'd be like, no, but I saw one in a book. And it's just the things that are around here that if you don't have those areas and you just don't happen to go to those areas, you're probably not going to see them. I just saw so many species of bees. Your big fat bumblebees, and then your honeybees. Bee balm is also in that mix that you've got that we planted over here. Just goes absolutely crazy in the fall. I planted a mix that basically it's like a 3-year mix, and it's the same thing that we handed out today. You got some things that will come up first year, takes a couple years for some stuff to germinate, and another year for another. So, and right on time in my test beds, year 1 came up fine. I've got a little bit of a cheat in this where I added a little bit of extra color that comes in early, because I knew we were going to have tall growing areas that people are going to be like, they just stopped growing. They just stopped trimming the stuff. And so there are some mixes in there that's all native, but it's going to come up a little earlier. So the first time you plant, just like here, things are going to come up. It's going to look pretty. Year 2, same stuff's going to come back up a little thicker, and then new stuff is going to come in. That's when you'll start seeing your little blue stem coming up from a seed, your Canadian rye, your wood oats and stuff like that. And then year 3 is just what we're about to go into this coming spring. So we'll see what also kind of pops up. Way better luck than I would have ever imagined. It just, everything was coming up and being pretty and people were talking. Once we kind of knew that those were going to be establishable and things were going to do well, that's right about the time we were starting to design the garden. And we wanted the garden just to be an absolute classroom, just a big, open, fun space that people can come and learn and relax, enjoy the library, and meet their neighbors. In the garden, we've got 17,000 square feet of just dedicated pollinator areas. And then afterwards, we're going to go do a little bit of planting for those who would like to go. Today is probably actually one of the best days you can plant, because generally when you're planting in fall and winter, which is the best time to plant this stuff, it's when you're having frost upheaval, which is what we're having, and also directly over the snow that was going to get here in about a day. So anybody who wants to come with, we're going to go up there and just sprinkle some and plant some of those areas. You've got a handout right here talking about mason bees, just a little example of some of the stuff that you can kind of attract, and we're going to start attracting here. Mason bees, a native bee. They are not hive-based, so they're individuals. You probably may have seen them before, but never really kind of noticed what they were. Really efficient pollinators do really well in areas like this. What is it? Let's see, it takes a normal European honeybee will fertilize or, cross-pollinate about 3% of the flowers that they come in contact with, because by what they do, they gather the pollen, goop it up, and then stick it on those little pods on their legs. Like sometimes when you'll see them on a flower, you see those little orange pockets like that. So they're binding all that pollen and then putting it on themselves, and then they take it back to the hive. Mason bees just absolutely belly flop into the flowers, completely cover themselves in it, and then get as much on them as they can, and then they take it back to the nest. They make their own individual little nests. They regulate the sex of the offspring by how deep into their little holes that they go. They'll nest in like little holes in trees and stuff that are made by carpenter bees. They'll bring in a bunch of pollen, they gather mud, bring mud and make like a little wall, leave the pollen, lay their eggs, and then do little chambers like that. They'll live for about a month. They're very gentle, they don't sting. And then they fade away and die. And then that over winter time into fall, they start growing and will form a fully formed bee. But it's not time for them to come out for another 6 months. So then they make themselves like a little chrysalis, and then a fully formed bee just hangs out and sleeps all winter. And then when the nighttime temperatures get above 55 degrees, they all activate, they eat the food, they continue, and they'll burrow back out, and then they start the cycle again. Very, very efficient pollinators. I think it was like, 250 to 300 of these little mason bees will take care of an entire acre of like an apple orchard. Whereas, you've got other, honeybees and stuff, and they have their place. They are less efficient, but then they make up for it in their numbers. This is something we're going to try here. We were also talking about doing like an apiary program, but we figured this would be a nice, good start to it. They're just like these weird little tunneling mason bees. They're all over, and I want to say there's like 25 individual species of just those. The plantings around here, I started noticing something that I never knew existed. They are called, flower flies. Never knew that there were flower flies. They're called wannabes. I thought that was super cute. Because some of them have evolved to actually look like bees to evade predators. But when you start planting your own little pollinator areas, and then also especially here, pretty soon, usually this stuff starts coming up in March and April, when you actually stop and look, because you'll look at it and be like, oh, you see some stuff moving around. But I was telling everybody here, just actually stop and look just for a second, and then you will see just how much is out there. Along the top of our living wall here, a plant was coming up. It was too early to tell what it was. It was starting to look scraggly, and it was really getting at me. So I was just like, this looks unkempt, but it's gonna be okay, I think. And then finally, when it got old enough and I could really identify it, it was hairy aster, which you've seen everywhere. What I did not know is that according to experts, it is in North America, especially this part of the country, it is the #1 most important fall pollinator plant. It's basically from September all the way into November, and sometimes just depending on conditions, those little white daisy looking flowers. You could walk up along the top of the fence line and you're about a foot away from them, and you could just see all these different creatures and stuff going. Some stuff is only for particular plants. You guys all know what mimosa trees, you got them on your yard, you got them everywhere. Speaking of pollinators and specialized ones, take a look the next time you're near a fully formed blossom. Chances are, if you look and you get real still and focus on it, you're going to see a tiny spider that only exists in mimosa flowers. They look like little tiny mimosa flowers. They are creamy, pinky white bodies with bright pink legs. And they're specifically evolved to live just in those. And so that way they blend in, and then, they're less likely to be eaten. We ended up seeing just an absolute ton of those guys. Let's start talking about the actual planting that you're going to be doing, the same stuff that we're going to be doing. It's the growing your prairie. On this stuff, like I said, there's a bunch of different ways to do things. Really, it just depends on what you can do and what you're willing to do. There's no real wrong way to do it. We don't use herbicides here, but I'm fully in favor of very judicious, proper use of herbicides when it's absolutely necessary. Usually there's a way around it. We were having some problems up here in our walkway where we couldn't get stuff to stop growing in the little gravel walkway. And you can't weed eat it, you can't mow it, and I can't round up that stuff because it's too much over time. So we found a solution, and it's a giant tank-based blowtorch. You've seen those like the fire wand things. Webb came in like a kid in a candy store with this giant blowtorch. He's like, "You gotta check this thing out." So yeah, we took it up there, and so we found a solution. And so we just take a blowtorch to the little plants and all the stuff that are kind of growing in our walkway. And it looks really weird that people get a good laugh out of this, right? Yeah, the library's up with their blowtorch again. Talking about like assessing your site. We kind of looked and saw what we had around here. A lot of the soil around here had sort of been depleted because the landscaping company would take everything at the end of the season and bag it up and then dump it in the ditch over here, just like you would anywhere else. But then it was just depleting the soil. There was no organic breakdown whatsoever. So we ended up with a lot of like pine chip and stuff like that. Cypresses, not the best place to plant those. And you've seen it all out there. It just drops piles and piles of those needles and stuff like that. But we started working some of that back in. It kind of messes with the pH a little bit, but it's not too bad. Really just looking at the area that you want to do in your yard. There are some stuff in here talking, I think it's the seeding into live or dead sod on page 3. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to worry about tilling everything up. You don't have to worry about smothering stuff if you don't have the time or want to do it. I am converting about an acre of my property out of town into kind of prairie. I don't have the ability to cover the entire acre in visqueen and then every 3 weeks uncover the entire thing to let it get some sun for 1 week and then cover the entire thing back up for 7 solid months. I wouldn't do that to the size of a normal garden because I don't have that in me to do that. But there are other ways that you can do it. You can throw this stuff directly over the ground that you have. If you have like a little plot in the corner of your yard and there's, grass there, just mow it really low and then you can seed right over that. If you want to kind of till it up a little bit, you can go ahead and till up as much as you can. I would recommend that you not till too deep because even if you see bare soil and you've stripped everything back that's organic, they have a seed bank in there and those things can stay for years and years and sometimes decades. When we had the garden done up here, we specifically requested as deep a fill soil as they could get. knowing that we didn't want them bringing in a bunch of, real bad seed bank stuff. You don't have to go crazy. Like I said, I'm not an expert, and we were getting way, way better results than I had any, right to expect. When you start talking about like defining your objectives, just what do you want out of this? Do you want just a single pot with some pretty cone flowers and some native species stuff, and then you want to start harvesting those seeds at the end of the year and kind of spreading out a little bit? Think about that. Do you want to start in a corner of your yard, but knowing that you want to spread it farther? Have an idea in your mind. And for me, when I have these little milestones that I could kind of go after, it made it a lot easier for me just to kind of keep up with it, because this is a slow process. We're talking about years here, like to get what's called a prairie flush. And that's what you see on your Instagram posts where you're just like, it looks like somebody set off a bomb full of flowers. That's years in the making. I will say this, we've had such good luck here, even in the first year up there in the garden. We had a bunch of erosion problems, so it was me a little later in the season than I would have liked, just out there for 17,000 square feet, just by hand, just because we didn't have the money to have it rehydroseeded. But all that stuff that you just happened to see that was growing in all the flowers, that was just super late in the season. Please grow something. We opened up June 10th. Please grow something. But then everything came up great. Setting your budget, the seeds that I gave you guys today and that we use around here from Prairie Moon, it's really cheap depending on the kind of mix that you get. I've known some people that I kind of got turned on to this that would like 2 or 3 people would go in on like an eighth of an acre's worth of stuff, and it was like $25 a person. That's a lot of seeds. The amount that you guys have in those little packets, that's enough to do about a 30 by 30 area. The little cards that I passed around, some of these seeds are like the size, I wanted to put even more on that little card that I passed around, but the seeds are so small that the static electricity that I was generating in my office chair was making it stick to everything. So a little bit of this stuff goes a long way. So that stuff that you've got is enough to do a nice sized area. Then of course, the smaller area you do it, the thicker it's going to be. There's some annuals in there. It's going to come up. It'll come up, but then they seed so hard that they'll come back the next year. They're fine. Different plants, how it goes with perennials and stuff. The rest of it's perennials. The mix that I gave you guys, did I pass it around too? Or did you guys get a little slip that's got like 3 little, those little cards, and then there should be like a little paper slip. Yeah, that guy right there. That's the other side. So this, let's see, the Pollinator Palooza, that's our standard mix that we've been using around here. This one's kind of cut off a little bit, but this is from Prairie Moon. If you guys have really weird situations at your house, they make super specific mixes that are specifically designed to do native species and have them do well. They've got a special one in case you want to grow flowers on top of a septic system. Really weird mixes. But this one right here is the exposed clay construction subsoil mix. And some of the stuff is the same as you find in some of the other mixes, but then it has ones that are specifically designed to set up really deep initial roots that are going to hang out for a while. The other one is a new one we're trying out this year, which is the Bird Bonanza. Again, there's a lot of the same stuff that's in there, but some of the plants are specifically designed to attract birds. I forget the name of the particular one, but there's one that when the stem comes up and the leaf grows, it grows in a curl, but it binds itself and then forms little spots where rainwater will collect, and that's where a lot of birds will turn to get their water from. So we're going to try that. We're trying to attract more stuff, especially up there in our little habitat area. Just the amount of new birds that we've been seeing in the area. Have you guys ever, you walk by a tall grassy area on a dewy morning and you see the little gossamer spider webs? Mm-hmm. So the spiders that make those, they don't generally reuse their same webs every day, or every night whenever they start going to town on it, because they're really, really small. They're very, very thin. So they break apart and whatever. Do you know what uses those when there's no spiders on during the day? Hummingbirds. Mm-hmm. They take their lichen that they make their nests out of, and then they collect spider webs from stuff like that. And that's how they bind it and make those really pretty little tiny nests. Just everything, so you'll see all your pollinators in your area. You'll, like, oh, they're really pretty, and you're seeing all this other stuff, and then, fall comes, winter comes, and they're all gone. Most of them are still there. They're underwintering in the leaf litter, they're burrowing into the ground, they're actually going into the stems. They'll make like little cocoons and wrap them up. Sometimes when you see tall areas, you'll see little gatherings of leaves and stuff, dead leaves that'll be kind of in a little cocoon. Again, not everybody can leave everything looking really tall and then not trimming it back. Here, and back there, we'll do that, but then over there, and then there's another little spot on the other side of the parking lot where we do just let it go wild. We want to try to encourage that stuff, but not everybody, has a neighborhood or whatever where they can get away with that. Most of the stuff, like I said, it's 2 to 3 year stuff. We've just had really, I can't stress enough just how well it's been. And anybody who's been around here and seen our posts, it's been really, really good. There also is another handout. That's just from Prairie Moon. It starts talking about like your, smothering and solarization. Like here's your planting instruction. You got sod removal. You can, if you want to, just don't dig too deep. Repeated shallow soil cultivation, you can do that. Your smothering or solarization. I might try a couple small areas just because I want to see if it will work. I will say this, that last year as a test over by my house, I had what you would just consider to be just kind of like, feral land. And I just overseeded, I mowed it just a little bit and then just overseeded it in, I think it was like February, a little later than you'd want to do it. And I had stuff. It was just, cornflower, coneflower, black-eyed Susans. I even had 3 really tall, what are they, swamp sunflowers, the really tall ones that you may have seen around here. I think my tallest one was about 10 and a half, 11 feet. And then those bloom in the late fall and are just completely covered in stuff. There's also mountain mint in here, which is the only species of native mint in North America. We had it growing up around here. It smelled great. The anise hyssop that was coming up was really nice. And of course, you smell that. It smells like licorice, or I always think Necco wafers. For me, I always think like, there was always the licorice one that was in the back that everybody was just like trying to avoid. Other than that, so in the instructions that you guys have, it'll talk about when to mow this stuff down a little bit. You can, and it'll help it come up a little bit thicker. But again, I kind of chickened out because I needed stuff to come up to where it looked like we were doing it on purpose. And so I didn't mow it, but we still had great results. So don't think that you have to be like, well, this thing says, within the first, when it gets up to 10 inches, mow it back down to 6, and then you wait 3 weeks, and then you mow it back down to 6 again. I didn't. I did it all, and it was perfectly fine. Just toy around with it, like see what works best for you. The burning. So prairies, as they grow, start creating like a thatch. Everything comes up, dies, and gets, thicker and thicker, but it'll make this little thatch layer. If it's thick enough, you're supposed to burn everything to the ground. Ours is probably gonna take a little bit longer, but probably within the next 3 years, 4 years, we're gonna have the fire department come out and burn these 3 sections and then burn that 17,000 square feet up there. It just depends. I totally wouldn't worry about it. If you're just doing like kind of a hobbyist little garden plot or something like that, you'll know when the thatch is, when you walk through that area and you can kind of feel it just real thick and organic and kind of tangly, then you might want to do like a little bit of a burn. Consult your local permits before you set fire in your yard. Yeah, my neighbor likes to burn a lot of stuff all the time. And while I'm thinking about it too, talking about like recreational mowing. So like our side of the property, it's about 2 acres of woods and 1 acre of kind of open, hopefully soon prairie land. My neighbor next to us has about 20 acres and it's beautiful. It looks like a park. It's really, really nice. All of the animals and birds are in my yard, not in his, because he removed every single impetus or benefit to any kind of wildlife over there. So while we have like our deer and our foxes, coyotes, armadillos have started showing up a lot. The variety of birds that we started seeing, we've got I think there's 5 of them now, but northern flickers that have set up shop in our yard. Yeah, and so it's like by not clearing off, like the property that we bought, the person who built the house used to blow he used to mow it down big time and then blow all of the leaves to the periphery of the yard. And you can tell where the line was because it has nice, rich dirt going all the way out, and everything leading up to my house is like scrubby grass and rock. They just stripped everything away. But now that we're starting to kind of let that come back a little bit, bugs are starting to come back, bring the insects, brings the birds, which brings the predators. We've got a couple of sharp-shinned hawks that have started nesting, and then the owls and stuff. We've got like a couple owl boxes out at one setup shop in there. Does anybody have any questions about what we've done around here? Anybody?
Okay, so on this side, next to the, around that way, over there, that lawn that's between us and the health department?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, it's just your standard lawn.
Yeah, that we stopped everything on it, and we're just, and another thing too is, so like all the water and then all the other, chemicals and stuff that we're spraying on it, it's still coming up green. So that was 25 years of just extra expense. And that was another thing too, is spending all that extra money when we can just put it towards programming and not having to do that stuff. I would love to convert that over. I can't because technically that's between between us and the health department. It was originally designed for in case the health department wanted to expand. That's why it wasn't an option for us to kind of expand the library out that way, because they were here first, and they kind of gave us this little bit of land. But yeah, all the other areas we're just kind of like just toying around with and trying experiments and stuff on. I'm trying to think if there's that. Really, yeah.
I mean, that out there might be a good place to muck around with, like short ground covers, like the strawberries.
Yeah,
the
strawberries and stuff. And I would have loved to, something we planted up there that it's starting to take was the stuff called microclover. It's 25% more efficient on water. It's green all year. It's self-weeding because it comes up thick and fast and then it grows all year. Yeah, we lost so much of it during that erosion issue that we had. And it's growing up in patches, and then hopefully we'll see if it overtakes. But all the rest of the grass that's up there, I planted a little bit of winter rye just for like soil stabilization. But everything else is just what's been blown in on the wind. People have been like, "Oh, did you guys see this stuff?" I'm like, "Nope, that's all kind of came in on the wind slowly but surely." Really, it's just, I appreciate everybody here, and I appreciate you guys being interested in this kind of stuff. And we want this place just to be a place where you can come to learn about this stuff or just see the things that you may not have seen before. I'm totally not against, like, cultivated gardens have their place. They're beautiful things. They're their own pieces of art. But here we're just trying a little bit of the different stuff. And it's a good stepping stone because people can start learning about the birds and the insects. Because we had all the pollinator areas, when we planted our fruit trees up in the orchard, I had 3 rounds of apples. They were totally mistimed. The summer ones did well, but struggled. Then that real bad heat wave kind of came through and shrank everything back. But then we had that mild spot, like what was it in September, where it was like 70. Flowers came back on, pollinators hit them, started making apples again. It starts getting into winter. I was like, now these are going to struggle too much. They're just, they're trying to shut down. They got these hangers on. So I ended up taking like 8 or 10 apples off. And then we had that other break. And then the flowers came. There were just enough pollinators left over on those, the anise hyssop, or the hairy aster, that they got hit again. And then we pulled another round of apples off, which were really good. So everybody should have a good set of instructions on what to do with this. For anybody who would like to, I know it's cold out, would like to go up there and do some planting. I've got some cups and this big old thing of seed mix. It's the exact same stuff I gave you. What's that?
I have a question about sun versus shade.
Yeah.
On these, for the seed that we're going to put out. So far, that mix has done well in full sun, partial shade, and then shade. Oh, wow.
I started adding a little bit into the mix. Again, like Prairie Moon has very specific stuff. In the middle of our cypresses, where it was the most shady, stuff was struggling. Stuff was coming up fine, but not as thick as the other. What do? I call them up and like, oh, we're about to introduce a Midland shade mix. And it came in, you had to keep them refrigerated. And I was like, all right, we'll try this out there. And then so that little area came up just as thick as the other one. Really, all of this mix is going to do pretty much it'll do fine. You can maybe plant half of it in one spot, half of it in another. And there are some stuff that will come up in this one and just not go in the other one for whatever reason. Over here, I just pulled off, whenever I was trimming back, I pulled off the last of the blooms because we think there was some kind of weird microclimate over here because they're always surrounded by really warm cars. The side of the building stays really warm. That's why, did anybody here get their oak trees in any way hit by those worms this past season, got eaten up? We did too, we lost everything. But that little try-hard that's right there when you first come in, that small oak tree, re-leafed out fully and is still green. Because I'm assuming it's because it's usually surrounded by really warm cars for 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, and then the side of the building gets really warm and then the black asphalt. But no, it's just now starting to turn a little bit. So in your yards, you may find, really weird conditions and you'd be like, well, my bee balm did not come up at all over here, but over here it's going absolutely bonkers. I planted the exact same thing. Little blue stem came up there and there, not over here. Canadian rye came up over here and not there. Was it, plants are dumb. Like, there's just no figuring out. So I think that just about covers it. If nobody else has any questions. Those little seed mixes, today and tomorrow, or when we get the snow, these are actually the best times to plant this. During frost upheaval. So that way you're going to just sprinkle it on the ground. In the next morning, the frost lifts everything up and then it folds it down almost exactly the right amount, which will be, it's like usually like a half an inch. If you're just putting it on bare ground and if you want to do this a little bit later in the season, just rough it up just a little bit, just to kind of get them in there. You don't have to bury them. You don't have to sow them or anything like that. Or the other one that they really recommend is over fallen snow. Just if you want to try a couple experiments, divide your little bag in half and say, I'm going to do frost upheaval on this one, and I'm going to do direct snow sowing over on this side. And it's literally just throw it on top of the snow. And it's just that stuff's lifting up underneath. And then whenever the snow is melting, it slowly works its way down, but just to the right amount because nature figured this out a long time ago. And everything is going, the way that it's supposed to. So, but yeah, I hope that you guys have really good luck with your stuff. It's just nice to see little pockets of it here and there. And just, I think if everybody kind of would do a little bit here and there, I think it'll make a huge difference, especially if we've lost 80% of it.
I'm recommending highly Doug Calloway's book. Have you run across Doug Calloway?
I have not.
Oh, and that's called Homegrown National Park Movement. Take your yard, convert as much of it as you're comfortable with or can get away with to natives.
I'm all for it.
Lawn.
It's just, it's so pretty. It's just, it's so pretty when these things come up and all the native grasses. But again, like I said, I understand, people in a nature way, and it's very hard to get over that mindset of what looks wild. We've been told wild is unkempt, wild is lazy. That was another one that I'd always heard, is that if you're not mowing all your stuff down to the ground, you're being lazy and you're letting it go because then you're I'm not saying
that we inherited from the Brits.
Yeah, and so it's just a nice way to kind of change things up and give you some fun new things to learn about and see all the new animals and stuff like that. So, well, I think that's it. Like I said, if anybody wants to come with, I'm going to throw my coat on and we can go plant a couple of areas. And then I just got some cups. We'll just sprinkle some stuff on the ground. And then when you guys come back in spring, we'll be like that with me. That stuff. So, yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.